Shabbat Shalom, good morning. I'm Rabbi Jenni Greenspan. I'm here for our morning Torah talk for Congregation Beth-El, our virtual weekly Shabbat Word of Torah. I'm getting the link in case you don't already have it to get our Chumash, the scan of Chumash Etz Chaim, so that we can look at our Torah reading together. I'm going to put the link to it in our chat. It's also on the Beth-El Be-Easy613.org website under Shabbat Talk resources, but I'll put the direct link that the Rabbinical Assembly made available. So if you don't have a copy of Etz Chaim at home, the Rabbinical Assembly has graciously been making scans of each Torah portion available. They do ask that if you're downloading them, just to let them know so they know how many people are utilizing the resource. I see I have Shabbat Shalom so far from Cindy Harp, from the Seagulls, and from the Ashworth. Shabbat Shalom. It's so good to see all of you. Even in just little comment bubbles, it's very good to see everybody. Shabbat Shalom and good morning. I'll give us a couple minutes for others to join us, and we will get started. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee because okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started a little bit, and as always, I'm happy to have others join us when they're able to, and we will be moving the video over to YouTube to take a look at later as well if any need to. So Shabbat Shalom. I see that my in-laws have joined us. Shabbat Shalom all the way from to San Diego. I'm happy that everybody is able to join in this way. If you want to look at the Etz Chaim with me, you can click the link that shows up from Congregation Beth-El, or you can go to the Be-Easy website and select the Etz Chaim link for the Torah Talk resources. If you have a physical copy of the Etz Chaim Chumash with you at home, I am on page 653. Well, really 652 and 53. This morning we are reading from two Torah portions. We have a double parsha this morning, Tazria Mitzora, which are usually some of the more difficult to find a modern context on, because the bulk of the subject matter in this double portion is what is called tzara'at in the Torah, a disease, an unclear disease exactly what it is, but it is often translated as leprosy. It's probably not exactly the same disease that we call leprosy today, but it is some kind of skin affliction, usually understood to be a spiritual affliction with a physical manifestation. And then, so the portion is about identifying it, diagnosing it, and then recovering from it, the treatment from it. So this portion feels a little bit more relevant this year than it has in other years, in that we have some kind of strange disease that we need to go to an expert. In the case of the Torah portion, they go to a Kohen to diagnose it. They check it a couple of times, and the person is actually asked to separate from the community for a period of time, and then they get checked again and are allowed to return. So in some ways, this feels extremely relevant with the COVID pandemic happening. And it's also, I think, a little bit different here. The person who has tzara'at, who has this disease, has to go to a Kohen, has to go to a priest, not a doctor. And it may be that the Kohanim were trained with medical training for the time, but I think that we should actually read this in a spiritual light rather than a medical light. And so I want to take a look at chapter 13 together. If you're following either in the PDF or the physical copy of Etz Chaim, again, I'm on page 652 to 653. When a person has on the skin of his body a swelling, a rash, a discoloration, and develops into a scaly affection on the skin of his body, it should be reported to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests, the Kohanim. The priest shall examine the affection on the skin of his body. If the hair in the affected patch has turned white, and the affection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous affection, it is tzara'at. When the priest sees it, he shall pronounce him impure. But if the white discoloration on the skin of his body does not appear, which does not appear to be deeper than the skin of the hair in it, and has not turned white, the priest shall isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine him again. And if the affection has remained unchanged in color and the disease has not spread on the skin, the priest shall isolate him for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine him again. If the affection has faded and is not spread to the skin, the priest shall pronounce him pure. It is a rash. He shall wash his clothes, and he shall be pure. If the rash should spread on the skin after he has presented himself to the priest and has been pronounced pure, he shall present himself again to the priest. And if the priest sees that the rash is spread to the skin, the priest shall pronounce him impure, for it is leprosy. It is tzara'at. There's 2 things happening here that I wanted to take note of this morning. One is the number of times that this priest is interacting with someone who has this affection, has this disease, has this something going on with his body. We use pure and impure are the somewhat imprecise English translations for tahor and tameh. Often tameh, translated as impure, is used when we have to acknowledge our mortality. A dead body is considered tameh. A person with this affliction is considered tameh. There are all kinds of reasons that someone would be tameh, and it's usually got to do with some kind of encounter with mortality, some kind of opportunity that we could be facing death. And here the priest comes to examine this person not just once, but twice before truly holding a diagnosis. And so this priest is acknowledging his own mortality to help others get through their own mortality, get through their own experiences of realizing that this disease may take them, which I think is an extremely powerful thing that the priest has to do, and a thing that we must be eternally grateful to the Kohen for doing, just as today we're eternally grateful for our frontline workers and for our medical workers who are facing others who may be ill in order to help make sure that they have what they need in order to be treated, to be cured. And like what we're seeing today, the treatment for tzara'at, for leprosy, is separation from the community. We're separating even if we don't have the affliction in order to help keep it from spreading. But the treatment is separation, is keeping us all in our own spaces so that we don't spread this impurity, this tzara'at disease further. And the priest is there to make sure that we know who is and isn't safe to be around in a physical medical sense right away. And then the priest goes back to look at them again. The priest does not declare someone impure and then forget them. The priest has to continually go back and check and see how are they doing, how are they recovering, and eventually the priest is the one who can bring them back in. The priest has to go out and check multiple times so that the community stays whole and that a person is brought back into community. So right now we are grateful to our frontline workers who are testing when possible and allowing people to know what they have and know what treatments they need, and helping them to re-enter into the community. The other thing that I notice in reading through this passage is the sheer number of times that the Hebrew root, if you want to look at the Hebrew for yourself, you can later, but the Hebrew root ra'ah, this is a resh aleph hey, which means to see or to look. It's also the root used for examine and for appear. The Hebrew has structures that allow a word to take to turn something into a causative. So if something appears, it makes itself visible, and it uses the same root also. So if you take a look through the Hebrew later on, if you've got some time, and just see the number of words that have these three letters in this order in them. I'm mirrored. The Resh, Aleph, Hey, in those orders, because it's all about looking. It's about this disease, this tzara'at that's happening, but it's about looking. The priest has to look at this person, has to examine what has appeared on their skin. It's all about seeing them. And Rabbi Avital Hochstein wrote an article a couple of years ago on this particular parasha, looking at the power dynamic that exists in that the priest seems to have power for looking, and that there's a risk to that the person who is being looked at can become an object and can become just something to look at and just something to examine, and gets reduced to their tzara'at. And so there's a comment actually on the Etz Chaim at the bottom of the page by Meshech Chochma, who's a later Hasidic commentator, who says the wording in verse 3 that when the priest sees him, the priest has to see the person, not just the disease. That this is a reminder for the Kohen to examine the entire person, not just the limb that has the tzara'at. Tzara'at is a skin disease. COVID is obviously an upper respiratory disease, but there's an encouragement from the priest who has the power of looking and the power of diagnosis to not only be looking at what is affecting the person, at what is causing their pain and causing their suffering, what is the disease. That they must see, the priest, the Kohen, and the doctors, they must see the whole person who is in front of them. And I think that this is a lesson that we can all take to heart, not just right now when we are fearful of a particular disease, but at all times. How do we look? How do we see a person? How do we see our family members in our home? How do we see past the cameras of our Zooms and Facebook Lives to truly see one another? How do we make sure that we check in with our fellow human beings and truly see more than the surface of what is happening to them? So this is a lesson that I hope we can take forward into our week and into our lives and into our month, especially. This month today we are celebrating Rosh Chodesh Iyar, the first day of the month of Iyar. And Iyar actually has two of those same three letters in a different order, but it is Aleph, Yud, Resh. Before I was pointing out Resh, Aleph, Hey. And Iyar is considered a month of healing because Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who began the Chabad movement, said that Iyar stands for Ani Adonai Rifa'echa. I am God, your healer. So I think the concurrence of Rosh Chodesh Iyar, a month of healing, with a reminder to look at one another and to truly see not just what is immediately visible, but all that is happening, and to truly see one another, comes together at a really beautiful moment when we most need it. And so my wish for all of us for this month is that we find a way to truly see one another, to be grateful to those who are looking at us and helping us get through, and that we all have indeed a month of healing. So Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov. I hope you have a good Shabbat and a good month, and I will see you next week. I want to say Shabbat Shalom to Kara Kennedy, to Jodie Friedman, I'm sorry, I'm reading too quickly, to Carol Steinfeld, Cheryl Toof, and Jim Roth, Marty Lay, and to Alan Hamburger. Shabbat Shalom to all of you that I didn't catch on the first round through. Shabbat. So happy to see so many of us logged in, and I hope you enjoyed our Shabbat Torah talk. Back in 15 minutes at 10:30 for Shabbat Chance Encounters with Cantor Melissa. I'm sure we'll have a little bit of Hallel for Rosh Chodesh there, and I will see you all on Zoom this evening for Havdalah. Shabbat Shalom, and indeed a month of healing. Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov.